VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker, and by the time most of yous are watching this, we're going to be 10 days away from the NFL draft, and that is what we call a week and a half away from probably learning the identity of the Vikings' next quarterback, or at least the quarterback of the future for Sam Darnold, folks. But we are here tonight. We're going to talk about all of that, believe me. We're here with Sean Kinner, who's been a Vikings fan for coming up on 30 years. How are you, my man?
Man, 30 years. It makes me feel old. Jesus. Yeah. Man, I'm doing good. Got to be excited for the draft coming up, like you said, in about 10 days. Our quarterback of the future is right there. It's just depending on who we're going to get. So you got to be excited about that. Never had drafted a quarterback in the top 10 before. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's unreal that I think it's the Vikings have never done that. The Broncos haven't, but there's an asterisk because they got Elway in '83.
Oh, yeah,
with an
right.
Eli Manning type of trade at the last second. And then the Ravens are the only other team that haven't, but they've only been around since '96 or whatever.
Yeah,
so
96.
I keep saying, or at least to hold out hope, that maybe that's the reason that this team that is actually really good in the regular season, they have the fourth best regular season win percentage in the Super Bowl era, but they haven't won a Super Bowl. Maybe this will do the trick if they get Drake May or they get J.J. McCarthy. We also got Brevin Bain here, who's fresh off a trip to Washington, D.C. Brevin, how you doing, man?
That was great. It was awesome to get up there and meet Jason in person. It's my first. I see all these stories about people from Vikings Twitter like meeting in real life. So it was awesome to be able to go up there to DC, that area, and do that. And I'm super excited to have Sean back on. We talked to him on Social 2 weeks ago, I think. So, and I'm glad to know that his Viking fandom is older than me in general. So, congrats.
Well, that's not going to help with him feeling old. The other thing I will say for viewers, especially those who engage on Vikings Twitter, I have never, ever had a bad encounter if I know the person and I say, hey, I'm going to go meet up with Sal Spice, or hey, I'm going to go meet Wesley Johnson, who's now my best friend from San Francisco. If you know the person on Twitter, there's a good chance you're going to end up liking them in person. Now, I can't vouch for all dating websites and shit like that, but I know if you get a good vibe from the person on Twitter, they're probably going to not let you down in person. That's my soapbox. Now we're going to jump into the Viking stuff. Brevin, I'm going to let you lead it off. We got some sweet questions for Sean Kinner tonight. What do you got first?
Yeah, and it feels like we're kind of going on for an eternity with this Justin Jefferson thing, even though we're still in the beginning stages of when you really need to re-sign JJ. So what are your feelings right now? Like, are you scared at all that this extension isn't going to get done? Are you not losing sleep over it? What's your kind of thoughts on the whole situation?
I mean, just kind of how long it's dragged out. It's almost impossible not to have a little bit of worry or a little bit of thought in the back of your head saying, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why haven't we signed the guy yet? We were this close to signing JJ before the season opener last year, and it didn't happen. Something happened to where they scrapped the deal and they just said, screw it, we're just going to go on with this season and we'll worry about it in the offseason. Well, here we are. We're 10 days before the draft. And Justin Jefferson doesn't have his extension. So, yeah, you're a little worried. But at the end of the day, I know a lot of people have thrown out we said we weren't going to trade Percy Harvin. There's no way we're trading him. And there was no way we're going to trade Randy Moss. And we traded him anyways. This is a completely different situation. This isn't a guy that's disgruntled and doesn't want to be in Minnesota. This is a guy that wants to get paid what he's earned. And I think we can all agree that Justin Jefferson has earned the right to be the top paid wide receiver in the NFL. So it's not a guy that doesn't want to be here, that doesn't want to play for the Minnesota Vikings. He just wants to get paid accordingly. And obviously, when you're a guy of, his talent and his magnitude, you want to know who's going to be throwing you the ball. So I think with the draft coming up and obviously us in a position to whether it's trading up or if they decide to sit and grab a quarterback at 11 or even at 23, then I think that's what Justin Jefferson is really kind of keeping an eye on. But I don't think that's going to sway his decision too much, whether he signs with the Vikings or not. Unless we go out there and we don't pick up a quarterback at all. then we got to start worrying and say, wait a minute, we got a guy that wants to know who the future quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings is on top of him getting paid. So, I'm not too worried, but let's see how this draft goes, and then we can start talking about worrying. But I think he'll be signing his contract extension pretty soon.
Yeah, and that's the point too. Like what JJ is doing is completely justified. I mean, he is the best non-quarterback football player on planet Earth, and through the first 3.5 years of his career, he's literally on pace, or was on pace before the injury, to be like the best wide receiver of all time, just in terms of like yards and whatnot. He would have to do that for like 10 to 15 more years, so it's not saying much. But no, the best non-quarterback in the planet, his contract is expiring right as you've got a huge question mark on who's going to be throwing him the ball. So everything from his end is like completely justified. And not that I think the fan base doesn't realize that, but I just think it's important to like keep reminding yourself about that. Like this guy, and not even just a football standpoint, like this guy has made the Vikings and just, I guess, the Wilfs like a godly amount of money. Just next to being the best receiver on the planet, like he popularized like the gritty. He didn't invent the gritty, but when he did the gritty, that like it popularized it. So he's kind of becoming this pop culture icon. He's all over the commercials and everything. So I think people just need to realize like it's coming in due time. He's completely justified on not signing anything prematurely. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
It's such a no-brainer for me that he will be signed because the moment Cousins signed with the Falcons, it's like your salary cap money now has to go somewhere. Like if Cousins was brought back for 4 years, 180 million or whatever he got in Atlanta, then maybe I would be a little anxious. Or it was 150. It was 180, wasn't it?
180.
I would be maybe a little anxious there because then the dollars actually get pinched a little bit. But I firmly believe, and I even advanced this a week ago on a show, I almost wonder if Cousins was never even part of this plan at all, because right now is the natural breaking point where Jefferson would take the mantle and get his 30-35 million per season, and you'd have this pristine period of 4 to 5 years with the blueprint, the rookie quarterback on a cheap deal, Jefferson making the mega bucks, and then 5 years from now, we're gonna have to figure out, all right, is Jefferson too old now? Is it time to give Drake May, JJ McCarthy? At that point, it'll be 65 million per season. But if they don't extend Jefferson, it's like, well, what are you going to use all of your money for? Because it's just going to be chilling out there next offseason. So it's not like the pennies are tight. They used to be for back-to-back seasons when Spielman's window was all in, but it's not like that anymore. It's a brave new world. So I have no anxiety about Jefferson's deal getting done. And the only reason I think this is a talker on this show and all the others is because it happened with Moss, it happened with Harvin, it happened with Diggs. So we're scarred. And that's my little speech. On this offseason, Sean, the Vikings have, let's see, let me get this straight. They have let 16 players vamoose elsewhere. They've signed 14 newcomers. They've re-signed 7 guys. And then they have the sweet-ass trade from March 15th where they got an extra first-rounder for more ammunition. I want to know, out of all of those or etc., what has been the best offseason decision to date? And we got the draft 10 days away.
This might kind of mix in some of my personal kind of feelings because, I mean, all Vikings personal feelings here. I got to go with Aaron Jones. And I mean, it's an obvious position upgrade, and I love Madison. I have personal ties to Madison. I'll always support that guy. He's a great guy. But Aaron Jones is obviously on a different level. So we're bringing in a guy that's going to boost your running back room tremendously. And you got a guy in Ty Chandler who I think we're all kind of excited to see what he can do this upcoming season. But I think we can all agree as well that he may have not been ready to assume that running back one position. So now you bring in a guy who's a solidified running back one. And on top of that, he's coming from, an hour away in Green Bay. So I think that's kind of adds a little bit of extra juice to that. And they didn't want him either. It wasn't like, oh, well, we couldn't afford you. We kind of had to let you walk. It was more of, no, we're going in a different direction at the running back position. We don't want you here anymore. And they cut him. So we didn't waste any time with signing him. I think it was the very next day, if I'm not mistaken, signing Aaron Jones. So I got to say that's my favorite. And on top of that, when you're bringing in a rookie quarterback, the biggest thing that you're going to want to have in your offense is you're going to want to be able to run the ball, especially if you're bringing in a guy like JJ McCarthy, which I'm a big fan of. But I also realize he's not going to be a guy that you're going to want to sling the ball around 40, 50 times a game with. You're going to have to be able to run the ball. So Aaron Jones, I would have to lean, and it's not a big gap between the other signings. It would have to be probably my favorite signing this offseason.
I enjoyed it as well because it was unexpected. I didn't think the Moneyball general manager would spend $7 million on a 29-year-old running back, but I've long said on this show for 2 years that Kevin O'Connell's offense will never be optimal unless the running game is average. It doesn't have to be top 10 because we know at his heart he's a quarterback and he wants to throw the bastard all over the place. But if they're going to be 27th per DVOA every season in rushing, A, the offense is never going to be elite, and B, he'll probably be fired within a couple of years because you have to be able to run the football when you get up 21-3 over the Saints. When Dobbs is cooking, you have to run out the game. You know the thing we used to hate Zimmer for because it got boring? We need that every once in a while. You need to be up 21-3 and say, you know what? We're taking the rest of the afternoon off. We're going to move the sticks with first downs. We're going to win this son of a bitch 30-14 and be done. But we know that even quasi blowouts are impossible for the Vikings. Like we haven't had a blowout since 2019 against the Chargers in your neck of the woods.
I was there.
That was the last time. I kid you not. That's the last time they beat a team by 17 points or more. So I am firmly in agreement with you that getting serious about the running back and thinking, you know what, we easily could have gone with Chandler and drafted my guy Braylon Allen from Wisconsin, and it might have worked. But with Jones, so long as he's healthy, you have a bona fide solution. And I'm excited there. And I think that's one of the top decisions as well. All right, Brevin, let's go to question number 3 for Sean before we go full tilt into his draft recommendations and predictions.
Yeah. So, of course, the draft hasn't happened yet, so we can't really choose anybody from the draft class quite yet. But is there somebody or multiple somebodies anywhere on this roster that you think is kind of primed for a breakout with reason or without reason?
The first position group that I look towards for having a breakout year this year is the secondary. And not necessarily our safeties, but I'm looking at our cornerbacks. I don't think we're going to draft a cornerback high in this draft. We will address the depth of that position probably in the 4th round, 5th round. But when it comes to the top end of this draft, we're going quarterback, and we got to go trenches. We have to go interior defensive lineman unless there's a guy that's on the board that you just cannot pass up. Those are the 2 biggest positions of need for your football team. And this is a great draft to do so. You go out there, you grab your quarterback, which obviously you need one for the future. And then we're very weak on the interior defensive line. So I think those are the 2 positions that we focus on in the draft. So I'm looking at the cornerbacks, and the 2 guys I'm looking at are Mekhi Blackmon, which he showed flashes of being a really good corner last year. He had his moments where he slipped up, rookie mistakes. It happens, growing pains, whatever you want to call them. But I think he's a guy that flashed a lot last year that can become that cornerback 2 on the opposite side of Byron Murphy. And the other corner that I'm looking at, which it may be a surprise to people, and I've criticized this guy in the past, not necessarily as a person, but more so of him not being able to stay healthy, is Andrew Booth. He's a guy that has kind of a nasty streak to him. He's aggressive. He has that, and it's kind of been a topic of conversation on Vikings Twitter for the past 3 days or so. He has that dog in him. He's a dog. He goes out there. He's going to scrap. He's going to fight for his football team. And I like that. I think it fits in well with the Flores system. So I think Andrew Booth, if he can stay healthy, and that's a big if with Andrew Booth, if he can stay healthy, I think he can have a breakout year this year. He may not be a starter, but with the time that he does get on the field, I think he can perform. And then one last guy, which I've been a fan of this guy since we picked him up, and it's on the offensive side of the ball, Tristan Jackson. I think this is the year Tristan Jackson finally makes the 53-man roster. I know he's been bouncing back and forth throughout the regular season. I think he made the 53-man, I think 3 or 4 times this past season. With the injury of Justin Jefferson, it kind of was able to slide him up into that 53-man roster. But I think this is the year that he kind of solidifies himself as maybe the wide receiver 5. I really like Tristan Jackson. He always does the right thing. He always does something good when he's given the opportunity. So that's my third guy, Tristan Jackson. And then obviously, like I said, Andrew Booth and Mekhi Blackman.
Yeah, and I like the Tristan Jackson pick. I think he actually had a pretty big time 2-point conversion. I forgot what game it was, but
Falcons, yeah.
Falcons, yeah. But yeah, I like Tristan Jackson. I guess looking at the secondary to kind of staying in that realm. I've asked this question to I think a couple people on the show and just people like on Twitter in general talking to buddies about the breakout, and nobody says Lewis Seen.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah. So, and I get why. Like, I'm not saying I think he's going to. I think that it's kind of obvious, but it's not really anything there. Because a couple weeks ago on the show, Ben Lieber kind of hinted at like he's not picking up the playbook. And then Paul Allen was just on the show, and he named every safety on the team, I think, except for Lewis Seen. And like, I didn't see any. I didn't even mention that in our channel Slack. I was watching the episode and I was like, he didn't say Lewis Seen. He said, I like Theo Jackson, but not a word about Lewis Seen. So do you have like the slightest glimmer of hope on Lewis Seen, or are you kind of out like we probably should?
I mean, I and it's not all Lewis Seen's fault. Again, it could be due to that injury that happened his rookie year, but just in my opinion, and it's not his fault again, is that I had a sour taste on my mouth the minute we drafted Lewis Seen. We trade back 20 spots with a divisional rival. When we had a guy, and I know people hate when we bring the guy up, we had a chance to draft Kyle Hamilton, the top safety in that draft. But no. Let's trade back 20 spots. Let's not get good compensation in return. It's not like we robbed our divisional rival for them to move up. And thank God Jameson Williams hasn't turned into anything special, or it'd be kicking ourselves in the face right now. But it just, since the beginning of us grabbing Lewis Seen, it was like, really? Like, if we wanted a safety, which I don't think we needed at that time, there was more positions in need at that time to do. I don't think we needed a safety. And if we did, why not go get Kyle Hamilton, which would put us in a great position. But also on top of that is he's in a position group where we're actually really deep at that position. Now we re-signed reconstructed Harrison Smith's contract. We have a guy like Cam Bynum who's getting better every single year. And in my opinion, we need to go out there and give the guy an extension as soon as possible before he gets too expensive. But then you got Josh Metellus. You got a guy in Theo Jackson. You also got a guy that you drafted last year in Jay Ward, who when he had opportunities to play, he flashed a few times. Mm-hmm. But we've never seen that flash from Lewis Seen when he's had the opportunities to play. Not even on special teams. Like usually when these guys come in and it's like, okay, you got to prove yourself coming up on special teams, they'll at least start to flash. And you can look back at a guy like Trey Waynes, who he didn't get any playing time on the defensive side of the ball. But he was playing on special teams, and he would flash on special teams. Now, it took him a little while to do so, but when he started flashing, they moved him over to defense, and I don't care what anybody says. Trey Waynes was a solid corner. Mm-hmm. They can talk all the crap they want about Trey Waynes was this, Trey Waynes was that. He was not that bad. He wasn't Xavier Rhodes at that time on the opposite side, but Trey Waynes was a really good cornerback. So I haven't seen any flashes from Lewis Seen. I haven't seen anything that gives me reason to say, you know what, this is going to be the year Lewis Seen is going to break out and just become this great safety or great player or even great special teams player. So I would say no. I just don't see it.
I got a couple notes here. On the 2022 draft where they traded down that many spots, 20 spots, we know now, 2 years later, what it's like to trade up on the board, like the cost of it. And I think the reason that none of us really loved the trade that night or thereafter is because the Vikings had an opportunity usually to step on somebody's throat with that trade, saying, you know what, we need a lot. Well, the problem was there were no quarterbacks in that draft worth a damn besides Brock Purdy. And so it wasn't a trade up for a quarterback, and therefore the price was small. And so we were all underwhelmed, like, oh, we're trading with the Lions, and then that's all we got. So, yeah, I think that started off on a somber note, and then it just has never got better. If you listen to Aaron Henderson, he claims that Lewis Seen is too mean for the Vikings locker room, that, like, he's just He says the Vikings locker room is a bunch of nice guys, and therefore they have a ceiling. And he hinted this weekend on Twitter that Louis Cine is just too violent for the current culture, which blows the hell out of me. And then you talked about Tristan Jackson. I was writing an article this week about the fastest Vikings on the roster right now. Did you guys know Lucky Jackson ran a 4.36 40 right before the draft? So he's actually pound for pound one of the fastest Vikings, and I had no idea. So a little factoid. And then finally, before I get to my last question, Sean, talking about Andrew Booth, the first guy you mentioned, when he got on the field last year, because I wanted to see for myself, like, is this guy, like, what's the deal here? Everybody's like, blah about the 2022 draft. When that guy played, it was like 100 snaps, coverage snaps. He was good. Like, I pigeonholed, like, here, I'm going to watch him and see if he's just garbage. But he was good. And so I think, if folks realize, I mean, this has to be the year if he's going to do something, year 3. I'm right there with you that although there's a lot of folks that say cornerback is still this big, huge need, I think they have enough guys for a camp battle. 5 of them, they're playable between Shaq Griffin, Mekhi Blackman, Byron Murphy, McCaleb Evans, and then Booth. Like, that's a lot of guys. And so I'm tending to think that there should be 2 relative studs that come out of that, and I'm right there with you that I hope Booth is one of them. Okay, draft. This is, I'm going to have every single person that comes on for the next 10 days, I'm going to get their draft recommendation and their draft prediction. So what I want from you, Sean, the first thing is a draft recommendation if you were in charge, and then either a semicolon or a period, and then a prediction of what you think they will do.
Okay, so if I was Kwesi, if I was the GM of the Minnesota Vikings, it's obvious you got to go get your quarterback. I don't think there's any other option at this point. You're in a perfect position to do so. You got 2 first-round picks, number 11, number 23. You got to trade up and get your quarterback. In my opinion, I let the first 2 picks play out, which I think it's going to be Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. You get to that 3rd pick, and I think you entertain New England. I think New England's going to pick a quarterback anyways. I don't think they're looking to trade that pick. But you still contact them, see, unless we've already contacted them and have a deal in place or have been talking about a deal. You contact them and say, hey, look, we want this guy, whether it be Drake May or J.J. McCarthy. I think it would be Drake May for the New England Patriots. I don't think it'd be J.J. McCarthy. But if you really want Drake May, I think you got to contact New England and say, look, what do you want? If it's not too extravagant, if it's not more than these first round picks, then you throw in, I would say, a 3rd and a 4th next year, possibly. I think that's a fair deal. I think you're moving back, 8 spots or so. You might have to throw in another pick. You do not want to give up another first-round pick. 2 first-round picks and a 3rd and a 4th should be plenty to move up that far. And you look for reference back at last year's draft when Arizona traded back with the Houston Texans from pick 3 all the way down to pick 12. And I mean, I had the trade details somewhere in front of me. I must have tossed them a couple weeks ago. But all it took them was that 1st round pick, which is the 12th overall pick, a 2nd round pick, and I believe a 3rd round pick. And then Houston sent back Arizona sent back a 4th or 5th round pick in return. So I don't know if you guys want to look up the actual details of that trade or not, but it's somewhere along those lines to where it didn't take a bunch of 1st round picks to move up. Now, granted, it wasn't for a quarterback, and you're going to have to pay that quarterback tax. Every team knows they're going to squeeze that orange for every drip of juice out of that orange. So I think it'll take more than that, but I don't think it's going to take a whole first round pick to get your quarterback or to get that number 3 pick. But in my opinion, I'm a J.J. McCarthy guy.
Okay.
Now, Drake May has grown on me for the past couple weeks, and I would be completely fine with grabbing a guy like Drake May. But J.J. McCarthy's my guy. I may be a little bit biased because I'm a Michigan fan as well.
Okay.
But he has something that you can't teach. And I hate to compare him to our former Vikings quarterback and Kirk Cousins, but Kirk Cousins had all the talent in the world, all the arm talent in the world to put the ball anywhere on the field. He can make any throw. I don't care what anybody says is, oh, well, Kirk lacked throw power. He couldn't get the ball downfield. That's a lie. We've seen Kirk push the ball downfield. Oh, he's Mr. Check Down, or he can't make every throw at every level. Yes, he can. Kirk is extremely accurate. He has plenty power in his arm. He can get the ball to wherever it needs to go. But what Kirk lacked, it was the mental, and he didn't have that it factor. And people can sit here and say, well, the it factor isn't a real thing. I don't know what you're talking. It's a real thing. If you played the sport before, if you know the sport, the it factor is a real thing. You don't see it. It's not physical. But when a guy has it, you can tell. J.J. McCarthy has it. He doesn't have all the huge stats in the world. He didn't put up a huge amount of tape to show you. But the tape that he did put up, it was really, really good, especially in crunch time. And I think that's exactly what the Minnesota Vikings need. Drake May, again, I like Drake May. Good player, good arm, little sporadic, but I'd be fine with picking him. But if I were the GM, I'd move up, and I'd honestly give the Los Angeles Chargers and Jim Harbaugh a call. Say, look, you love J.J. McCarthy. We want him. We love J.J. McCarthy. Let's put your favorite quarterback, the Michigan Wolverines' greatest quarterback of all time, and put him in a great situation in Minnesota with the best wide receiver in the league, a tight end in T.J. Hawkinson, a great wide receiver too in Jordan Addison, a really good running back in Aaron Jones, and actually a really, really good offensive line as well, and a defense that's getting better. So I think you can go to Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. It won't take a ton of picks to do so. It'll probably take your 11, take your 23, and probably a third-round pick next year, fourth-round pick next year. I think that can get it done. Because the Chargers aren't going to trade with the Broncos within their division. They're not going to trade with the Raiders, who are in their division. So we're the prime candidate to contact the Chargers, who need a whole lot of spots filled on that roster. So you contact the Chargers. Let us give you 11, 23, and next year's third-round pick, which I think we're going to have like 3 or 4 third-round picks next year with the compensatory picks. Or what is the compensatory? Compensatory. Yeah, I always get the word messed up.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a ton of third-round picks. Throw one of those in there, and I think that gets it done. So fifth overall pick with the Chargers, and you grab your guy, J.J. McCarthy. That's what I would do as GM. And my prediction, I think that's what happens. Yeah. I just think all signs are pointing towards J.J. McCarthy being the Minnesota Vikings' next quarterback. I don't think the New England Patriots trade out of the number 3 pick. I don't think the Commanders trade out of the number 2 pick. And I don't think Arizona trades out of the number 4 pick, because I feel like they want the best wide receiver in this draft, which in their opinion is Marvin Harrison. In my opinion is Malik Neighbors. I like Neighbors a little bit better. But the only team that would scare me that could mess that up is the New York Giants. Because they could contact the Arizona Cardinals and say, look, move down 2 spots. You'll probably still get either Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison, but we want to go up and get the quarterback. So you don't have to trade all the way back down to 11 and then cross your fingers and hope that a guy like Brock Bowers falls to you. Go and get one of the top receivers still while getting some trade compensation back. And then you're only, moving down 2 spots to the number 6 spot, and then you can still draft your guy. And then the New York Giants jump up to 4 and grab J.J. McCarthy, which I know that's kind of been swirling around a little bit. But that would be the only team that I'm concerned about that could wreck our plans of drafting a quarterback.
The it factor you talked about with Kirk, I think I'm like you, that I think he's a damn good quarterback. And if he had the supporting cast like the Rams 2 years ago, I'm fully convinced Cousins would win a Super Bowl with the 2021 Rams. But it might be that lack of it factor, which is why he hit free agency twice in the last 7 years when he's that productive. That it's like the only explanation. And then one of my hot takes based on what you said that I'm going to publish here in the next 10 days is a hot draft take is that the trade won't cost as much as we've blown it up to be. Like, there's some outrageousness about 3 firsts, and if they throw in Darisaw, then we'll do it. If you even try, I'm sure you guys have done mock drafts on like PFN or PFF. If you even try to do 3 firsts to New England, it won't let you do it. Or excuse me, 3 of our firsts for their third. They're like, no, that's not allowed. That's too much. Yeah. And so I know there's a quarterback premium, and I fully expect it. But the outlandishness of thinking 3 firsts New England isn't enough. I think by the way that we've just kind of boiled into this, like, all right, well, maybe it's 3 firsts and something else. I think when we look up on draft night and we're like, oh, that's the trade, we're going to be like, oh, okay, so it wasn't that outrageous. That's one of my things. Brev, do you have one more thing for Sean? Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I think if another if a third first round pick is thrown in there, then you're getting like a second back in return to where it's not just the first round pick going to them. You're getting a high value pick in return to where it kind of softens the blow on that third first round pick. So I agree with you. I don't think the compensation to trade up is going to be ridiculous. You are going to get that quarterback tax though. They are going to try and grab another pick or two from you, but I don't think it's going to be the first 3 first round picks and a bunch of other crap, or Justin Jefferson, which I've seen people throw out there. That is not happening. I can promise you that.
And also remember that the teams allegedly 2, 3, 4, and 5, Commanders, Patriots, Cardinals, and Chargers, remember that they're allegedly all open for business. And so in my mind, I guess it's the best case scenario is that the Vikings can be competitive with their offer. They can say, you know what, screw you to the Commanders. We're going down to Patriot. And we can create a market that's, in theory, create a market that says, like, if you don't want this shit, we're going on to the next team. Screw you. We don't need Jaden Daniel. So if you have that type of necessity, or if you have that demand of all these teams that are nibbling at roster building with multiple first rounders, I think there might be a little bit more of a market than we're assuming. Brevin, I was saying, my bad. Do you have one more thing for Sean, or should we let him go?
Oh, no, you're good. We here at VikesNow like to be thorough. So we know we're probably trading up for a QB. Pretty confident in that happening. But for the sake of thoroughness, if that's a word, if we are to stick and pick at 11 and 23 in some universe, where would you want the Vikings to go? Would you want them to settle on Penix or Nix at 23? Would you want them to go BPA both? Please don't say Penix. I like you.
I think
I would take Penix there.
Everybody that was opposed to the whole Kirk Cousins, he's a statue in the pocket. We hate Kirk Cousins because he doesn't move. Regardless of what that 40 times says, Michael Penix doesn't move like that in the pocket either. He is a quarterback. He is a quarterback. So you're asking for a left-handed Kirk Cousins in a sense if you want Michael Penix. And it's a lot of the same people that hated Kirk Cousins, which is actually hilarious. But if we did stick at 11 and 23, now I think there's still a chance J.J. McCarthy can fall to 11. Wow. Believe it or not. I don't think he will, but I think there's a chance that could happen to where top 3 picks are going to be quarterbacks. I think we all know that. But if it's not J.J. McCarthy and the Cardinals just stick and pick and go with their, Marvin Harrison, more than likely that's who it's going to be because they desperately need a wide receiver. And then you look at the Chargers there to where they need a ton of wide receiver help. They need tight end help. They need defense. They need a whole lot of help. And that's why they're such a prime candidate to trade down. But if they stick and pick there, or they could trade down for somebody that wants to come up and grab a guy like Joe Alt, the best offensive lineman in this draft for some people, or draft the other tackle out, I believe it's Oregon State, who's a great run blocker. Or even a guy like Brock Bowers, who, is kind of a sure shot. I'm not going to say Pro Bowler, but a really good tight end at the next level. So I think there's a chance that J.J. McCarthy may fall. If the Giants don't decide to go quarterback here and everybody's kind of just sticking and picking with where they're at, which we've seen this before in the NFL draft to where we're expecting a bunch of trades to come and happen come draft night, and no trades happen in the top 10, and it just kind of falls with how it falls. There's a chance that happens too. And if the Giants don't go quarterback, you're in a prime position to where J.J. McCarthy might fall to you. And then you just got to worry about the Broncos trying to trade up into the top 10, or the Raiders trying to trade up into the top 10, which I think you have far more compensation to beat them out. If a team calls you and say, hey, the Broncos are trying to trade up to number 8, which I think is the Falcons. Hey, look, Broncos are trying to trade up to get number 8. They're offering in this and this and this. Hey, we just want your 11. Next year's, 2 third-round picks next year and something else, a 5th or a 6th round pick. Then you do that and you go get your quarterback. But I'm I'm not gonna say JJ McCarthy falls. I'm gonna make it a little more interesting, and I'm gonna say you got to go interior defensive line with one of those picks, with whether it be 11 or whether it be 23. And I think 11's the spot to do so, unless you go edge rusher and Dallas Turner or what's his Lalu or whatever his name is out of UCLA. I always mess up his name, but he has injury issues. So I think your pick right there has got to be one of the top interior defensive linemen or edge rusher. And then at 23, you can grab a guy like Bo Nix or Michael Penix if you want, but I don't think you need to. At that point, I'd rather just ride it out with Sam Darnold this year. Like, call me crazy, but I'd much rather use that 23rd overall pick on, say you do grab your interior defensive lineman at 11, go give him a partner and get an edge rusher at 23. Go grab a guy like Jared Verse, who could be there at 23. Go and grab him, and then you're almost solidified on the defensive end. You got your edge rusher, you got your interior defensive line set up. It seems like you have your linebacker set up with Ivan Pace, and then you got Van Ginkel, who we brought in, another edge rusher, a guy that can also play really good in coverage as well. So, and then Greenard as well. So you got a room full of pass rushers that can get to the quarterback. So, and as we know, that's one of the main things you need to have if you want to have a successful team and a team that makes a run in the playoffs in the NFL. Got to be able to rush the passer, got to be able to stop the run, and you got to have a quarterback that's able to get it done. It doesn't have to be great. It's got to be able to get it done. So if you don't go quarterback, you just stick and pick at 11. If JJ McCarthy doesn't fall to 11, go interior defensive line and or pass rusher, and the same thing with pick 23, in my opinion.
I keep thinking about doomsday scenarios where they either can't trade up or they wait for the McCarthy fall. And I know Brevin won't want to hear this, but it would make life easier if the Vikings really like Penix. Let's say they know that he can be good and they can teach him to scramble a little bit. It really makes life easier if it's like, oh, sweet, we can just get Penix, if they feel that way. Brevin certainly would disagree. But if they are willing to wait on a would-be slide from McCarthy, life is easier if they're like, oh, sweet, well, we wanted Penix anyway, which they would say afterward at 11 or 23. All right, Sean, we've kept you longer than we promised. I'm going to ask you this. Will you come on our Saturday night, or in this case, Sunday night show about once a month? Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sweet. Because I liked your takes. You walk through them with like complete rational analysis, and I really enjoyed that. All right, gentlemen, anything else?
No, man. Anything? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah,
I always love talking Vikings, man.
I'm gonna put you on the calendar for like probably May 11th or so, and I'll holler at you behind the scenes. All right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful evening. All right.
I appreciate it. Have a good one, guys. Peace.